Have you ever woken up from a dream and thought, whoa, where did that come from? Was it just random or maybe something more? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating idea. The view that our spiritual journey is meant to take us from getting mysterious messages in our sleep all the way to a state of direct, unshakable knowledge. So let's explore how that's all supposed to work. I mean, it's a question we've all asked at some point, right? For literally centuries, people have turned to their dreams for answers. And the perspective we're looking at today says, yeah, dreams have absolutely played a huge role in divine communication, but, and this is a big but, they were always meant to be just the starting point, the first step on a much, much deeper journey. All right, so let's start with what our source material calls the old way. Think of this as a time, mostly what we see in the Old Testament, where the main way divine messages came through was indirect, often showing up in dreams and visions. And when you think about it, it's everywhere. You've got Abraham, who receives this massive promise while he's in a deep sleep. Joseph interprets these wild symbolic dreams that literally predict the future of nations. Daniel sees visions of kingdoms rising and falling. This wasn't just a random occurrence. It was a primary method of communication, a way to reveal plans and give warnings. But why? Why this method? Well, this perspective frames that whole era as a form of spiritual childhood. The idea is that the understanding people had was only partial. It was kind of veiled. They were always looking for external signs because that full, complete understanding of the divine wasn't something they had inside them yet. And that brings us to the moment where everything changes, a complete paradigm shift. The source we're looking at presents the arrival of Christ as more than just a historical event. It's the introduction of a brand new way to connect with the divine. And this gets us to the absolute core concept, anointed knowledge. The argument here is that Christ is this knowledge. He's not just a teacher of it. He's the living, breathing embodiment of it, a truth that shifts our entire way of understanding, from something external and mysterious to something internal and direct. Honestly, this one idea is the key that unlocks this entire way of thinking. So this anointed knowledge isn't just another option. It's presented as the single, unified path. All those old ways of seeing things, partially through visions and dreams, they get replaced by a direct line. The veil is lifted, making it possible to truly know God, not just guess about him from signs and riddles. So what does this new reality actually look like? So what's the practical difference here? Well, the source describes it as the difference between seeing fuzzy shadows in a dream versus having a crystal clear, face-to-face conversation. This comparison here just lays it all out so clearly. On one side, you have the spiritual child. They're relying on these indirect messages, waiting for a sign from the outside. But on the other side, you've got the spiritual adult, who has a direct connection and is guided by a truth that's already inside them. It's a huge shift, from being dependent to being spiritually mature. Now, Moses is often held up as a kind of prototype for this new reality. That face-to-face relationship he had with God, in his time, that was completely unique. But the idea here is that through this anointed knowledge, what was once a super rare privilege is now meant to be the reality for everyone. Okay, this brings up a really critical question then. If communication is now supposed to be direct, how in the world do you tell the difference between an authentic messenger and someone who's just, speaking their own thoughts? The source material draws a very sharp line in the sand. A false prophet is basically defined as someone running on their own authority. They're speaking visions that come from their own mind, even if they use all the right spiritual language. The key is they haven't actually been sent. On the other hand, a true sent one has three really clear marks. 1, their words aren't their own. 2, their message is totally rooted in that core anointed knowledge. And 3, and this one is so important, their goal isn't to build a following for themselves. It's to empower other people to find their own direct, face-to-face connection. So let's pull all these pieces together. This whole framework, it's not about two different, competing kinds of faith. It's about a single path of growth, a journey that takes you from being a believer to becoming a knower. And this timeline just maps it out for us. You start in infancy, where you're dependent on signs. Then you move into the learning phase, where that anointed knowledge starts to clear out all the old partial ideas. That leads you to spiritual adulthood, where communication is direct. And the final stage is maturity, where you're living with a complete, unveiled, internal understanding. So the real takeaway here is that the journey isn't supposed to stop at that first step. This perspective is basically arguing that faith is not meant to be a static state of childhood. The whole point is to grow up, to become a mature adult who has the wisdom and direct knowledge that only comes from a true face-to-face relationship. And that really leaves us with a final, big thought to chew on. If direct, internal knowledge is the ultimate destination, what does it really mean to move beyond simply believing in God to a place where you can truly and honestly say you know God? It's a powerful question, and it's right at the heart of this entire journey.